Omar Rios. And Omar is a really special individual that we're going to be talking to today. And I'm excited to bring Omar to the Latin Life audience. And Omar really inspired me, and I know he's going to inspire a lot of you. He is a publisher, and he's also an artist. He publishes a series of comic books. He was born in Durango, Mexico, like a lot of us listening, watching this show right now. He came here when he was 7, 8 years old, and not knowing the language, he became part of the U.S. society. But I'm sure with a lot of struggles, which I'm hoping to talk with him about today, through some mentorship, which is something that's also really important to our audiences, mentorship, and through your social circle, you were able to pursue your dream. You really need a support system, which I'm sure you're probably going to touch on. And the teachers that helped Omar get to where he is today was probably a really important part of your trajectory in your career and in your company. Omar started a company called 540 Comics, which he's going to be talking about, which includes some amazing characters, which I was just blown away by some of these characters because I could relate to them. So we're going to be talking a little bit about, for example, Nocturnal Knight, which is a Mexican-American superhero. But we're also going to be talking about another really favorite character that you helped develop, Omar, which is Xochitl and La Pluma Negra. So I'm sure hopefully touch a little bit on that as well. So without further ado, I know I could keep talking about you, Omar, because you've done a lot in your life already. And the first question I have for you is what really inspired you? What was that point that inspired you that said, you know what, I'm going to do this idea, which is the comic book, the Mexican-American comic book heroes, and your company. How did you reach that point where you made a decision that inspired you to make that big leap?
So I grew up with 4 brothers, and we pretty much, the mentality my dad always gave us was, I brought you to America to do something with your life. And he would say, working, 9 or 5 a.m. to, 8 p.m. some days, and working out in the sun. Like, he would try to teach us, like, every summer he would take us to do like odd jobs on the side, stuff like that. And I remember one day we were doing shingles. I mean, as many of us have probably done it at some point in our lives, and we're out in the hot sun. And I just remember I was like, man, I can't do this. Like, we're built for more, like there's so much more for us to do. And I mean, since I was born, I was always an artist. So just seeing my dad tell me that, it engraved it in my mind. And I said, you know what? I'm breaking that stereotype. I can't do it. I'm not going to do it. We're literally living in a world that's, you think of a Hispanic, they put us in a stereotype and put us in this like capsule. And I don't want that. And that's essentially why I wanted to launch my own business and become a comic book creator, because Latinos are built for more than just that. And just seeing, everything that LATINLIVE stands for, I stand for, and my company stands for. Because as a kid, you look up and you see like all these brand name superheroes, but none of them look like us, Right. And that's why I didn't want to, my son, if I ever have a son in the future, I have my nieces and my nephews, mm-hmm. I want them to aspire to see, I can look like Nocturnal Light, I could look like La Pluma Negra or, Black Feather. I want them to think more and just think outside that stereotypical shell, just because I feel like we can be doctors, we can be lawyers, but at the same time, we can build our own empire, and skin color has no restriction. And that's essentially why I want to break that.
That's
because
amazing.
It's important, because we have such a short life. And if you don't do anything great with it, then what's the biggest thing you do is inspire other people to do it. And that's the biggest thing we want is we establish ourselves. We want to help others like us, minority groups, regardless, Latinos or not, like we want them to become creatives. We want them to pursue those dreams. And just, I remember nailing that shingle And I was like, man, I just can't do it. And I cried. I told my dad, I was like, I can't do it, Dad. He's like, this is exactly what I'm trying to teach you. I want you to not live like that. I want you to get an education. I want you, like, we had a heart to heart that day.
Yeah.
He just told me like everything. He's laid it out for me. He's like, I'm providing everything I can. But, at the same time, you kind of like, I want to provide for my parents. And that was my inspiration as well. I mean, comic books are pop culture right now. And essentially I want to be the next Stan Lee, Omar Rios, whatever. Like, I want that to be me because I want my stories, my perspectives to be told and understood.
That's amazing. And, I think a lot of kids are going to hear and learn from. Thank you for telling that story. When you were, on your way to making this decision, this big decision, right, to do this, what about the people that supported you? What was that like? And what would you tell people that maybe didn't have that support system? Is there anything that you recommend for them? But I'm just curious about that support system and what those people mean to you.
When we essentially came up with the idea, I didn't want to monetize it because, you essentially lose the love for it, as they say. But I think that if you look at it in that perspective,
yeah,
you're going to be disappointed. So the biggest thing is start it off as a passion project. Surround yourself with people that are driven like you, and you have to sleep, eat it, and, just everything has to revolve around your dream because you have to protect your dream. And it's important to do that because if you don't surround yourself with people that, like my teacher, like I had one teacher out of all my teachers in the high school that I grew up, and he literally, I might get in trouble for this one, but I'm okay. I want to speak my truth. He said that the other teachers saw all the other Latino students as just another number for the meat packing plant where I grew up. To me, I was like, no, like, I hate that. Like, we are built for more. And so he said, you know what? He's like, I have something for you. He told me on like my 2 weeks before I left high school, he was like, I signed you up for a college tour and you're going to go to college. And I said, no, my dad said I need to work. And he said, no, me and your dad are going to have a talk and you're going to go to college. Wow. So they talked, my mom talked to him. Wow. And he literally gave me art supplies. He helped me format all my paintings, my drawings. He got my portfolio ready. He said, this is exactly what you need to do. And he was doing this outside of school hours, wow. Which what sucked after that is that they fired him. He was such a caring guy. He's still a really close friend of mine. We keep in contact. His name is Linus Oglesby. He's one of my favorite art teachers and probably the only teacher that actually cared about my career as a human being instead of just a Latino, Right. And it just kind of like spoke to me like, okay, if someone believes in me that much, why am I not doing this? So I remember I showed up to college and they were like blown away by my work. They were like, oh my gosh, your work is amazing. I was just like in shock and they were like, we're going to give you a full scholarship. And I was like, oh man, like, are you serious? Like, are you serious right now? Wow. And I remember I told my dad, and my mom, wow. And like, I cried a little bit and they were like super proud because I was the first one to go to college. Wow. And it was just amazing because out of, my brothers and everybody, like, some can and some can't, like you said, monetary is always a big thing. And I was able to go. But the biggest thing that I tell people, and a lot of people always tell me like, why are you're 30 years old? Why are you still trying to pursue this dream? It doesn't matter how old you are. If you really love something and you're not happy with your day-to-day decisions, you have to do something that keeps that fuel inside of you and it keeps you motivated. Because when you wake up, like when I'm making a comic book and I wake up and I'm doing it and writing it, it's amazing. And having that support system, like my best friends who are my business partners, and having my teachers believe in me that way and just giving me the right advice, getting me into, they just, I don't know, it just feels amazing. But the biggest thing is if you're shy, and I was a very shy kid, a lot of Latinos are afraid to speak up because like, oh man, we're going to get in trouble or they're not going to care. Like,
let me stop you right there. Cause I think that's a very important point.
Yeah.
That I think it's time for us to, and part of the show, we talk about this a lot. And I think, we're afraid to stand out, right? We're afraid to speak out. We're afraid to get out of our sort of bubble for whatever reason, like maybe we have family that are undocumented, or maybe, why do we need this extra stress of whatever protesting, or whether it be putting your hand up in class, or, going after your dream. It's so many, right? Why do you think that is? Why do you think that we don't stand up, speak up? Because you did. What do you think is holding us back?
I think the biggest thing is fear, and it's human nature to have fear, but we're so conditioned, and a lot of the times, sometimes other family members, our friends, just negative influences in our life will tell us like, nah, dude, just be quiet, don't say anything. No, it's okay, just it's fine, dude. Don't even worry. No, like my support system told me, no, dude, I want you to. You have a talent that is God given, and I want you to use it. I don't want you to waste it. And it just engraved in me. My grandma, my mom, my dad, like my friends, like everybody, just my brothers, like everybody just told me, like, dude, your work is amazing. Like, why are you quiet about it? Don't be so modest about it. I continue to be humble because I was raised in a humble home, but I'm very proud of my work because I want people to see it.
So, Omar, one thing that, see, I'm being here in Silicon Valley and talking to many investors that don't understand necessarily that humbleness, right? They tell me that our humbleness hurts us, these business people, these high-level business people, because what happens is that the white, let's just call them the white Anglo-Saxon guys, right, that are from the US, they have no problem. Like, they in fact blow things up. They take something really small and they blow it up, and they make it really big. Like your career, what you've done, if you heard one of these guys speak, they'd be like, pow, it's like they almost over exaggerate, which is fine, because that's kind of what you have to do in business. Just be very proud of your stuff and put it out there. Why do you think that is? Why do you think Latinos hold themselves back in that area?
Because we're taught that if we're creídos or cocky, we're not worth as much, I think. And I feel like we need to break that stereotype as well. And I feel like kids should be proud of their, parents should be proud of their kids and really push them as high as possible. As if you don't, like, parents are not, like, someone in your life is going to motivate you no matter what, and you have to listen to that conscience, even if at first it seems like it's trying to like when we're kids, teenagers, we just kind of want to stray away from it. We're like, nah, that's where the cockiness comes from. But when you develop your own persona, if that conscience is telling you like, hey, you need to be proud of your work, you need to listen to it, and you need to break it, because it's okay to be creído if you can back up your work, obviously. And I was never taught to be that way, but at the same time, it's just conditional behavior, I feel. And I feel like we're slowly changing that because the times are changing, and we're first generation Mexican Americans essentially, but we're learning to understand that. And I feel like something you said about them blowing up, like, if I was white, I would be like, oh my God, I'm the best. It feels weird saying it, but in your heart and in your mind, you think that way. And I feel like you just need to break that barrier in your mind and just say it.
Yes. I think that's I think that's one of the barriers that we need to break amongst and that's why I love, this forum, is because we talk about that barrier, one of the barriers, which is ourselves. Because you said, you had people around you that had this belief, like it took you this much work to get just to where they believe, right? And I think that if we can start breaking that gap, or make that gap quicker amongst like our people, our whatever you want to say,
we just have to lift each other up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like we don't do that enough. I mean, we start like, oh, es muy creído. Like, no, be proud of him because people took time. Like I'll take, I don't know, 10 hours on a drawing or 5 hours, but you take that time because you got that critical thinking, you got that emotion, you got that inspiration. Like people don't realize that, because in school people would ask me like, hey, I need you to draw something for me. Like it's not like you're you're a service, but there's a lot of time and thought process that goes into it. And I feel like people need to appreciate that more. And I feel like that's probably the only thing that I would add to that, aside from everything you said, because I mean, you hit the nail on the coffin.
So let's start moving into some of your work. And when I started reading about your, some of the characters, I'm like, wow, man, I wish I had that growing up. Because I too, I wanted like some examples of why are all these guys, all these superheroes, they don't have anything to do with me. You know what I mean? They don't look like me. They could be from another planet almost, because I grew up in a Latino neighborhood. And I think a lot of our, people that follow us also are in Latino neighborhoods based on our demographics. And they live in mostly Latino neighborhoods. And you may not see somebody that looks like you in the movies or on TV or on, and now thank God for YouTube, you're seeing more of it. But still, believe it or not, Omar, I don't know if you know this, but Latinos in the US, we don't do YouTube videos. We watch them, but we don't do them. And it's because of that barrier that we talked about, is that confidence, right? We don't have it. Just getting people on to do a show like this, it's the first time, or they're a little embarrassed to be like, my stuff's going to be out there. It's like, seeing some of these characters. So I want, if you could talk maybe the inspiration for some of the characters and tell us a little bit about them, each one.
Yeah. So I'll start off with Nocturnal Night. I remember I was watching a documentary. It was about Stan Lee and the history of comics and DC Comics, the big titles. I don't know if I can say that or not, but I was watching them because that's my inspiration. Eventually I want to work for these big companies. And, I kept hitting roadblocks. And then one day I was like, I looked at the catalog for both sides and I was like, man, there's not a lot of Hispanic heroes. I was like, what the heck? Like, there's no Mexican, whatever. And if they are, they're full of stereotypes. I was like, I'm sick of that. Like, I'm so sick of the stereotypes. And that just kind of, ignited the flame in my soul. And I was like, I'm going to create Nocturnal Night. So what I did is I took an inspiration from one of the big companies, Marvel, and I created the color scheme is similar to Daredevil, but I love Batman. So Batman's my favorite superhero just because he's a human with superhuman abilities. He's not a superhero. And I kind of merged that together, and I was like, you know what? I want to put him in a perspective, from my perspective, from the Mexicano view, the lens of the Latino. And so I was like, you know what? He works in a tire shop because that's what, start him off. Just
before you go on, I think this is an important point before we move on to this part, because I think this is the part I really dug, the next part you're about to talk about. But before you get there, I wanted to make sure I covered this. So, just for our viewers, because most of our followers, viewers, listeners, there's a contingency for comic books and we over-index for them. Based on the numbers that I know that probably about 15-20% like comic books. So we're talking to the other 80% that don't know. And I just want to, so they don't have to waste time Googling it in case they're going to Google it. So from what I understand, just from the comic book or from the sort of this character, the superhero realm, this is done all the time where you kind of merge like a Spider-Man with Hulk, for example, right? In that world, and that happens a lot. That's what I understand. Is that right? Is that something that's done pretty common?
Yes and no. It's hard to pinpoint exactly the type of powers and all that stuff. But the reason that I made my character because both of the characters I mentioned don't have superpowers. So I wanted to show that a Mexicano could be a superhero, and he doesn't need powers to overcompensate who he is.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and I just wanted him to be, an intellectual, a detective, a martial artist, someone who's driven with goals, just a human being like you and I, who have these dreams. Because I mean, I started him off in a tire shop, and eventually he's gonna move up in the world, and I'm hoping, with everything, that he becomes, a Bruce Wayne, or a Wall Street Journal guy. But he's still keeping that superhero mentality.
Yeah.
Even if he's making a ton of money, he's not doing it for the monetary compensation. He's doing it to help others, to protect, you know, the weak. And that's essentially what we want to do as superheroes. Is you want to protect others that don't have a voice. Like, maybe I'm giving a voice to people that want to make superheroes and they're afraid to, because they're undocumented or something, and it's scary for them because they're like, oh, if we put this, our
shine the light.
shine the light on me, they might see me, and that's scary, and I don't want them to feel that. I want them to stand out and shine regardless of that, because a document, a little paper, doesn't determine the type of person you are. You're amazing regardless.
Yep.
And I feel like people need to remember that. And that's essentially my inspiration behind Nocturnal Night. And I mean, I'm really proud of that character. I'm putting my heart and soul into it. My dad actually was the biggest inspiration behind that. His name is Lorenzo. So the character's name is Lorenzo Cruz. I wanted it to be a recognizable name. And he has the big twist, and I'll keep it short, is he has an uncle who works for the cartels. So It's kind of like that double-sided coin, because I know that happens a lot, and you're like, oh man, like, should I choose the good side or the bad side? And I want people to kind of like read it and take their own perspective on it without being biased. And I feel like, kind of keeping that within the realm will help people dive into the character and learn more about it, because he's amazing,
No, that's an amazing story. But tell people where they can get these comic books, where they could order them or where they can get them.
So you can go to comiXology.com and then just look up Nocturnal Night. We currently have 3 issues. There should be, by the time this airs, there will be 2 more issues that drop. So that'll have a full volume, and it's over 100 pages.
Yeah, and we'll post that in the article, and post that also wherever we're posting this interview. So tell us about another character.
Xochitl. So La Pluma Negra. She's currently in development, but she should be out by the time this airs. We've been really focusing on the female Latina perspective, because in our culture we have telenovelas and the damsel in distress, and the stereotypical male and female gender roles. And I wanted to break it also. I wanted to break that with Xochitl. Xochitl, I did a lot of extensive research in the Aztec warrior realm. Yeah, so her name kind of means like sunflower, something similar to that. I'll have to, double check it. I haven't, read up on it lately, but she is essentially a mix between Wonder Woman and Captain Marvel, and both of these characters are the powerhouses for both of these companies, and she is a mixture of both. So basically what I did with Xochitl is she's a superhero. She's superhuman, but she's Latina. So basically, as I want to, instead of, women being saved by men, I want her to save the day, because it's so important to have female empowerment. I have 2 little sisters and nieces.
Let me give you a high five here. That's awesome, man.
And cool. I've had so many female role models in my life, that just, the single mom, all these people. Like, my grandma is like the biggest inspiration for me. She taught me everything I need to know about how to love a woman, how to take care of a woman. And I just felt like understanding their perspective.
By the way, Omar,
go ahead.
The majority of the people that follow us are ladies.
Oh, wow.
And for us, that, like, single moms in the US, because that we over-index for being single moms in the US, those are so important that we empower them because they have like our future in their hands. You know what I mean? They are basically taking care of the future of the US. We want to empower them, also give those little girls that are growing up an inspiration. I think this is awesome, man. I mean, so go ahead. I just wanted to
No,
get
no,
that
thank you. Yeah, I just think it's so important to have that Latina empowerment as well, because again, it goes back to the stereotypes. It's just it's not like that, Like everyone is a human being and needs to be treated equal, regardless. And she becomes like I'll just kind of give you a short synopsis of the story. So her parents were immigrating to the U.S. when she was born, but they have a miscarriage. She has like kind of like a miscarriage, so she's born out of wedlock essentially, and so she's born with these powers because she was conceived. She was conceived in a Mayan temple, so when she was conceived, like it was like an alignment of the
I
planets. Or
love that. That's awesome. That's killer.
so when she's born, like she's growing up in East LA, and again, same thing, the perspective of a Latina, and both of her parents, essentially her dad runs away because the immigration's coming, just to get him away from her and her mom. And so as they're going, the mom dies, and she has to give her child to a stranger. But giving that child to those strangers was probably one of the best decisions ever, because they empower her so much. They give her so much love. I mean, obviously her parents would have gave her the same love, if not more, but they put her in the system to where it helps her, and it doesn't create this vicious circle of bad. It's one of those feel good stories. When you watch a movie or read a book,
Mm-hmm.
that's essentially what I want to create with Black Feather. And seeing her become the smartest in her class, seeing her become a scientist, having these superpowers, learning how to hone her superpowers as a woman and as a Latina, I think it's just so beautiful to me, because we see all these other superheroes and you're like, oh, it's just they have all this privilege and all this easy, uh, road ahead, and there's no roadblocks. Well, this girl's gonna have a ton of roadblocks, but she's gonna overcome them. So essentially, she comes in, and I love the design. I fell in love with the design because her design is inspired by the Aztecs, and the Aztecs, we typically know more about the men than we do the women. So I did a ton of research again on the women's, the chains, the earrings, the locks, all that stuff. I wanted to
I
make
think
sure.
it's super cool that you did all that. I think it's super, super cool that
Yeah,
you did all that digging, because then we know that there's authenticity to her character.
yep. And that's essentially what I wanted to convey. Just I want the art to speak for itself. If you look up, not to go back to Nocturnal Night, but if you look up his title, it has the Mayan or the Aztec, design on there. Same thing with Black Feather. I'm gonna add a ton of like, East LA. I'm gonna have to do a ton of digging with the photos and everything. But I have it all designed and drawn. I just need to, release it. But essentially, she's gonna conquer the world just like Nocturnal Night. And I want both of our people, men and women that are Latino, to not be afraid and just be themselves. And I just want to change all the stereotypes and the gender roles with both, just so we understand each other better. And I feel like there will be more empowerment in our community, just from these superheroes that this dude from Durango that had no idea what he was doing eventually created. And I just think it's beautiful to me because I love them. Like I love both of these characters so much that I I wanted to give up on them at some point, but you know what? Here I am. Here I am.
Yeah, I'm super glad. I'm sure there's a lot of people that are glad that that you pushed through, and we talked about this earlier, but your character Sochi, right?
Yeah.
So she had that thing that we talked about, just the overcoming, right? Overcoming. What do you think it takes? Do you think it's God? Do you think it's prayer? Do you think it's your support system? Like, how do you get over it? How do you, for all those Latinas that watch us and follow us,
I think you have to really believe and protect your heart. I think it's super important because they have so much love to give us, and I'm speaking for my mom in general, and she will do anything to protect me from anything. And same thing with my grandma. I remember I called her a few days ago. We were going through a family crisis because of COVID, unfortunately. But she was so happy to hear me, and she was just so like, she's like, mijo, she's like, I te, te, te quiero decir que Dios te siga cuidando. Like, my grandma doesn't have to do that. She's like 80, like, you know, she's
Right.
older in age, and for me to like feel that, like, it just like that love you have to give, you have to use that as strength, because you have to empower yourself and surround yourself with people that truly love you and care about you, because genuine people that truly love you will give you the strength that you have no idea. You can move a mountain. And that's how I felt when my grandma said that to me. I hadn't talked to her in a year
Mhm.
because of, life. Life happens. We lose connection with our family.
Yeah.
But for her to say that, like, que Dios te siga bendiciendo y te siga cuidando, to me that meant so much, because I'm 30 years old, and she doesn't have to say that. And to me, it just made me so happy, because that's the love that a Latina woman has. They don't have to give you that love. They don't have to do that. But the fact that she did, and she continues to do that, like, I don't know, I feel like Latina women are so strong. They're stronger than our men. And I'm probably gonna get a lot of flack for that, but I feel like it's important because like they do so much for us.
Well,
And
there's an interesting fact, Omar, in that before we were sort of colonized, because that's essentially what the Mexican population, we're a relatively young race because we're only as old as, after the merger of the mestizo, right? But before the mestizo culture, the indigenous culture, were really female, driven. I know that a lot of the north, more northern part of the America, like the U.S., Canada, Native Americans, were led by, were matriarchal, right? And it was the woman that really was the powerhouse because they they could, they could manage things without killing each other. I guess that's what evolution taught us, taught the original indigenous people. But it wasn't until, sort of the European mindset of male driven, the machismo, right? You kind of fear driven versus love driven societies. That's sort of what we're, now I think we're realizing that we were kind of wrong, because what we did to the planet, what we've done to, cultures, we've destroyed cultures.
Oh yeah, and I think that the biggest thing, like, if there are kids that are watching this with their moms, I think the biggest advice that I would give them is think back, even if it's older or whatever,
Yeah.
back to when, like, every time any of us go home to see our parents, what is the first thing that your mom asks you? Ya comiste? You could have eaten, and you're still gonna eat again because you don't want to be rude. But it's the same thing. Going back to that love, man. Like, that's essentially what I want the essence of Black Feather, La Pluma Negra, Xochitl, to entail, because she's gonna be smart and she's gonna be this award-winning Latina, but
Yeah.
at the same time, she's not gonna forget her culture, her heritage, but she's breaking all the gender roles and stereotypes by having that love. And I feel like that's important in our community. We just need a little more love, and love for everyone, especially our Latino women.
Yeah, I think that you're on target with both of those characters, and I could see them inspiring a lot of people. I could see a lot of parents buying the comic books for their kids in addition to other comics. And growing up in East LA like I did, I would have loved to have read a character in my neighborhood. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
but I didn't get that, and I think it's so awesome that you're doing this, Omar, so that kids do. So if you could tell us where they can find where you want people to go.
So you can go to comixology.com and just look up 540 Comics, or you can type in Nocturnal Night. Again, Black Feather will be available by the time this airs. And then you can also find my social media, which is my Instagram, where you can see all my drawings. I post a lot of work in progress, so you can see my progress of the shots of everything that I do is Ozone 719, and then the main page of Instagram for my business is 540 Comics, and then we also have Twitter at Instagram or at 540 Comics. Sorry, and then you're more than welcome to add me on Facebook. My name is Omar Rios. I post a lot of my work. I try not to be too political, but I am very outspoken with how I feel about things and the discrimination of our people and other minorities. I am very outspoken on that because that's essentially what we want to do, is represent ourselves. And this isn't to hate the Anglo-Saxon man, because my best friends, they're Anglo-Saxon, and it's not about that. It's just, I think it's just understanding each other as one people. And I feel like, don't forget your beginnings or where you come from. And I think that you'll be successful regardless of where you go. You just have to keep that drive and keep that fire lit, because no one else is going to keep it lit for you.
Wow. Well, I was actually going to ask you what, kind of your last words, and I think that was perfect. That was actually perfect. Check out Omar. I think Omar is going to be a rising star, and, follow him now while you can, because you can say you knew him when.
Can I say one more? Can I say one more thing?
Yes.
So I actually designed, if you Google Superman if you Google it, just type in Superman.
Yeah.
You should see my design. I'm actually working on a story to pitch to DC Comics, because I want to be the sole creator of something like that. So this would actually help me if, since you're giving me a platform. I feel like if you Google it, it'd just be nice, because you'll see my work. And I took a lot of design from the Mexican Air Force.
Yeah.
We need to educate ourselves in our own government that we have back home. And, I say back home because it's the motherland, I think it's important to have that, because aside from, not to outshine Nocturnal Night or Black Feather, because they're huge, but I think it's important to have that as well, just to have all the perspectives covered and cover all of our bases.
Cool. I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's important. And like I said, we're going to be listing Omar's social media, some of the work that he included with the information that we have. We're going to be posting that. And anything else? Anything else before we?
The biggest thing I could tell any kid that's an artist like me and is Latino: don't be afraid to show your work. Really be proud of what you do, because you put a lot of emotion and time into it. And regardless of everything that's going on around you, just keep that focus and just follow the light. The light will lead you to, like I said before, you will move a mountain without realizing it. And I feel like I'm moving it now. But
definitely, you definitely are. And I think you're going to be an inspiration, Omar, to so many people that are going to be listening, watching, that have that dream but don't know how to, don't have the courage to follow that light, or even to look for the light. You know what I mean? I think you've kind of laid it out, that you follow the light, right, and see what happens. I mean, what you're doing is moving a mountain. This stuff is, I mean, these characters are, I mean, I can't say no. I'm going to be checking it out. You know what I mean? And I want to show it to my son and to my nephews and nieces and stuff like that. Perfect. So, you know what I mean? I'm sure there's a lot of people out there like me. All right.
I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, you're welcome. All right, bye.
All right, bye, man.
All right.